Hello, I'm Langston, and I'm back on my channel with election forecasting. Today I'm talking about how Donald Trump could win. Oftentimes, Donald Trump is very underestimated, especially in this space. Donald Trump is seen as an electoral boogeyman, as someone who has no chance of winning, and absolutely the worst candidate the Republicans could ever nominate. But when looking back at the facts disagree with that. Donald Trump is the best performing Republican in 30 years. So even though many people continue to underrate him, Donald Trump has proven to be an electoral force. And though his force was defeated, it is clear other Republicans usually are defeated by much larger margins. So we're going to be talking about how Donald Trump could win. Before I get into this, I think that it is unlikely for Donald Trump to win. I don't think that Donald Trump has no chance. I think Donald Trump probably has a 15 to 30% chance of winning, but that's still a pretty significant chance. And we're going to be talking about how Donald Trump could win and looking at how his electoral path could intend. So the first thing I want to talk about, which realistically could really benefit Donald Trump the most, is low black turnout. And that is something that has been the topic of news recently, and Democrats really fear low black voter turnout. And this is something that Joe Biden cannot win without is black turnout. Black voters are the most important part of the Democratic coalition and is the primary reason Joe Biden beat Donald Trump in the first place. Because if you remove these voters, Donald Trump would still be president. So again, with this, Joe Biden doesn't realistically have a path to 270 if these voters don't turn out. So with that, that alone could get Donald Trump elected. Now, it is unlikely that these voters will not come around and choose to vote for Joe Biden anyway, but many Democrats are very afraid of this. And I want to play this clip because Kamala Harris recently decided to admit to this, which was something that was very shocking on national TV, to a Democratic operative and black activist, Al Sharpton.
Are you concerned about turnout, especially among blacks in the election? You hear these polls. Are you concerned about that?
I am always concerned about turnout, whatever election we are talking about. Because let us, in a moment where we thank everybody for what they did to turn out in 2020, appreciate that it takes an effort to turn out to vote. People have things to do. They have obligations. If somebody's working 2 or 3 jobs,
So I'm gonna pause this video because I'm not gonna sit up here and like show the whole interview. But my point is that Democrats are very afraid of low black turnout. And the fact that the vice president is on TV acknowledging that is a huge problem for Democrats. And I want to, get into that later. And, some of the states that Donald Trump could benefit from that. So with that, for Donald Trump to have realistically any chance of winning, he'd have to hold on in Texas and North Carolina. And, Texas in particular, I think regardless of the scenario, unless it's absolute best case scenario for Democrats, Joe Biden will definitely come up short in Texas. I do think even in Trump's best case scenario, Texas will still narrow just because of trends. But I definitely think Donald Trump could hold on in Texas, pretty by a pretty comfortable margin. In North Carolina, obviously, if it's bad black turnout, like Democrats are going to lose North Carolina the same way they've been doing for a decade. So that's that. Um, so when looking at the path for Donald Trump, I think the first state that he would need to win would have to be Wisconsin. And I said this in my last video. I think Wisconsin is the easiest of the states that Joe Biden won to flip. And even though Joe Biden won it by a bigger margin, he won Arizona and Georgia. Arizona and Georgia are trending much faster to the left than Wisconsin. Wisconsin is trending to the right, actually. So again, Wisconsin is the easiest state for him to win. And though Republicans have performed very bad in Wisconsin, they have a lot of things they could benefit from. So in 2020, Donald Trump did really well with the working class. And that's something people don't want to really give him credit because oftentimes you hear people talk about the working class, but Donald Trump did pretty well with the working class. The working class is not what stopped him from winning. What stopped him from winning in 2020 was higher black turnout and continued trends in the suburbs. That is what stopped Donald Trump from winning, not the working class. These working class areas trended to Donald Trump. So Joe Biden did worse than Hillary Clinton here, who historically did bad. Joe Biden did the worst with the working class of any candidate has ever done on the Democratic side ever. So when people talk about the working class, that's not even true. Like there's no evidence of Joe Biden improving with the working class. So what Donald Trump did is he improved with the working class and improved the rural voters, and that's how he was able to keep up with Joe Biden. So a lot of times you hear people bring this up, oh, working class, when Joe Biden did not make any gains with these voters, and if he did, he would not have performed 4 points worse in these driftless counties. Like he would not have performed 4 points worse here. He would have performed 2 points worse here. So he did not make any gains with the working class. And he only survived because black turnout was higher and because the suburbs trended to the left, which is why he thanked them in his victory speech. So as we saw in 2022, if Democrats can get black turnout to drop in Milwaukee, that alone would be probably enough to win Wisconsin, considering that's what happened to Mandela Barnes, a 70,000 vote drop off here. And even if they can get turnout up in Madison, like if they can't get black turnout up in Milwaukee, Democrats are probably going to go down in Wisconsin. That's what happened to Hillary Clinton. That's what happened to Mandela Barnes. And I realistically don't see why Joe Biden would be any different. I definitely think the suburbs will continue to trend to the left with the wild counties, but in 2016, these counties trended to the left and Hillary Clinton still lost. So again, I do want to point out that these counties have definitely narrowed a lot since 2016, but it doesn't really matter. A L is an L, and these counties are still, trending to the left. So because of that, Democrats are in a pretty uncomfortable situation in this state. And also, you have to talk about the fact that obviously Republicans are to blame for this, and it could obviously backfire on them. But student loans, which was something that Joe Biden promised to the American public, was just something he did not achieve. So because of that, a lot of these college-educated voters cannot turn out for Joe Biden because he hasn't done enough left-wing policies, enough action for them. And even though that might be unlikely, that could happen. Now, turnout in Milwaukee being down is much more likely, and that alone would be able to give Donald Trump a victory in the state, on top of him continuously being able to improve with the working class and with rural voters. And Donald Trump's done a really good job of framing the elites and framing, people of targeting him. And that alone would have a very big impact on him in a head-to-head matchup with Joe Biden. And the next state I think Donald Trump would have to win would be Georgia. And Georgia is a state where Donald Trump is very underestimated in. And Republicans are at a disadvantage in Georgia, every Republican candidate. But a lot of Republicans and Democrats try to act like Donald Trump has no chance in winning in Georgia. And Donald Trump is the strongest Republican candidate for Georgia, and no one can deny that. People oftentimes want to point to Brian Kemp and all of these other victories Republicans had in 2022. But Republicans had those victories because of bad black turnout and because they had an R+6 electorate. So my point is, you had an electorate Trump would have won by 6 points. So you did not outperform him. You just had an electorate that he benefited from. So again, Georgia is a state that doesn't really have swing voters. Georgia has a lot of black people and a lot of white voters. They vote Republican. Georgia's like every other southern state. So because of that, there really isn't that big of a margin in terms of how the state can shift. Georgia is a turnout state relative to a swing state. So when people blaming Donald Trump for Georgia's demographics, the Atlanta area has become rapidly more black. So if there's more black people, it's going to be more Democrats because those voters vote 90 to 10 for Democrats. So I don't understand how Donald Trump is blamed for doing bad in the Atlanta suburbs when Mitt Romney did worse in the Atlanta suburbs than John McCain. John McCain did a lot worse than George W. Bush. Like these areas are trending left because of black people. Y'all need to, number one, the biggest problem that people have is they can't even acknowledge that. So the main reason the Atlanta suburbs are trending left is because of black people. And unless Republicans can win black voters, they can't stop them from trending left. So again, Donald Trump is not to blame for that. And other Republican candidates like Ron DeSantis would be able to motivate more of those voters to turn out because of his rhetoric. So Donald Trump has been able to frame himself in a way that changes people. And often, yes, Donald Trump also just got indicted in Georgia, but realistically, black people don't really care about that because, to be honest, black people always hated Donald Trump. Like black people always thought Donald Trump was a white supremacist. So I mean, I don't realistically see how that hurts him. But for Joe Biden was someone who black people actually turned out in record margins for. Like black people, they're angry at Joe Biden because Joe Biden is who made promises to them, not Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't really owe black people anything. He only got like what 6, 7, 8% of their vote. So they're mad at Joe Biden because they voted for Joe Biden. They didn't vote for Donald Trump. So yeah, a lot of them they're laughing. They want to see Donald Trump in jail, but that doesn't mean just because they're angry at Trump does not mean that translates to votes for Joe Biden. And I want to point out that Georgia has become a lot blacker since 2020. Like there's more Democratic voters in Georgia now than it was 4 years ago. But there's more in North Carolina. It doesn't mean they're gonna turn out. So again, all of those arguments are BS. And like I said, Donald Trump has a decent chance of winning Georgia. I don't think it's likely. I think these voters will come around, but Like these people, they're over him. Like they're really over Joe Biden. Joe Biden has really betrayed black people from their perspective. And these voters are petty. Like I've lived here and I've had people tell me they won't vote for Joe Biden because they know he can't win without them. So a lot of people they want Joe Biden to lose just because they want to teach Democrats a lesson. So, these voters are petty. They understand their power and they're gonna use it. And just because y'all don't want to give them their props doesn't mean they don't understand it. So that's that. But before I get into that, I think there are states that Donald Trump doesn't realistically have a chance of winning. So the first state is Nevada. Nevada is a state where a lot of people swear Donald Trump is going to win, but like I said, Donald Trump will sweep every electoral swing state before he wins Nevada. Donald Trump, uh, he flipped all the Rust Belt states back in 2016. Like he swept the board with swing states and still lost Nevada. So my point is that Nevada has proven that uh, Republicans will have to win the whole board before they can flip Nevada. And the reason why that is Nevada is a minority majority state, which minority population is growing. And even with bad minority turnout, well, not even minority, bad turnout from people of color, in particular from Black, Hispanic, Asian Americans, Nevada still barely shifted to the right in 2022. So my point is that yes, turnout might not be good for Democrats, but it would never be as bad as it was in 2022, especially in the presidential election. And Donald Trump just does not have the votes in the rural areas. And you hear people talk about, oh, Las Vegas trending to the right. Okay, Dallas trended to the right too. Houston trended to the right. San Antonio, the city trended to the right. The counties might not have trended to the right, but this actual cities trended to the right. When you improve Hispanic voters, of course these areas are going to trend to the right. But incumbents always improve with Hispanic voters. And because of that, Democrats are going to improve in Las Vegas and the Las Vegas metro area just because of trends, just because of the demographic changes. And you don't have any evidence to back up why they're not going to do that. And unless y'all are going to sit up here and argue with the US Census data, I don't understand like how any of y'all can even sit up here and deny that. So because of that, Donald Trump is definitely going to come up short in Nevada regardless of the outcome, as well as in Arizona. Arizona is allergic to modern Republicans. You saw Carrie Lake lose to Katie Hobbs. And what people don't want to talk about is Katie Hobbs won by a larger margin than Joe Biden. Like, I find that absolutely crazy. She won by twice the margin of Joe Biden. Like, people talk about she won by such a narrow margin. She won by zero point 0.7. Biden only won by zero point 0.3. So she won by more than double the margin of him. So, with that, the fact that Katie Hobbs did better than Joe Biden, like, Joe Biden is going to win in Arizona, like, regardless of the outcome in the base case scenario, Arizona's still probably going to go blue. So Donald Trump realistically have a chance of winning there. In Michigan, in Donald Trump's best case scenario, I could see him winning in Michigan. But as of now, I definitely think Joe Biden could realistically struggle with black turnout, like as the videos keep talking about, as the articles keep coming out. But I don't think he'll struggle enough to lose Michigan, in my opinion. And I think that Donald Trump will make gains with the working class, will make gains with the rural voters. And Michigan, long term, is trending Republican, and a lot of people want to sit up here and deny that, and I really have a problem with that. People keep talking about how Democrats reformed in Michigan, like Michigan this, Michigan that. Michigan is still a right trending state. Detroit's population is still going down. So as long as that happens, as long as you have black people leaving Michigan, you're going to have Republicans making ground in the state. And Republicans might not be taking advantage of that, but demographically, Michigan is trending right, and that's that. But again, I definitely think Joe Biden will hold on in Michigan, but I could see Donald Trump flipping it in a best case scenario for sure. Like if things got really bad, similar to what you saw in 2016, Michigan is not out of touch. The last state for him is Pennsylvania. And this is a state I think will be somewhat hard for him, but I don't think it's impossible. Donald Trump, he's going to do well with these rural and working class voters. He has not hit his ceiling here. And I think that these rural voters, these working class voters, are going to come out big for him. And I definitely could see Joe Biden absolutely collapsing with black turnout in Philadelphia, as well as in the city of Pittsburgh and in some of these, Philadelphia suburban counties. I definitely think that most of the Philadelphia suburbs will trend to the left, like Montgomery and Chester County. But Hillary Clinton trended those counties to the left and still lost. So, like, these counties have trended to the left before, and Democrats still came up short. So, if it did not stop Hillary Clinton from underperforming, there's a reason to think it won't stop, future Republicans from doing bad. So, again, Donald Trump has a path, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. And though that path isn't the most unlikely, Donald Trump has the best chance of taking Joe Biden out. And many people want to point to Nikki Haley, point to candidates that have no history of achieving what Donald Trump has done. Just because you vehemently despise someone does not mean everyone else does. So again, that's my topic on this video. Make sure you have a nice day, you guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe down below, and have a nice day, you guys. Goodbye.